2024 was an eventful year for Nakuru.
I think heroes belong together.
I'm just here for the vibes, a good time, and seeing the men running around with the ball.
Here at Mtaa Wangu, we managed to cover very interesting stories.
Ilitokea tu kusikia tu nini mamaye, mgulumo wa mamaye. Yenyewe ilikuwa inateremka, saa tuko tunajua nini inaendelea. Kutoka sasa mtu akitoka nyumbani ndio unapata, unaona ndio kuna mto yenyewe ni mingi imebeba hadi mamiti. Sisi kuja tu hivyo tunaona wewe unapata mamiti, unapata mto inateremka.
Some of them were very difficult to do, like the rampant femicide cases that we had.
At about midday, we got a report that there was a dead body around Ilview in Kiamunyi, Masinjeri.
And also other dramatic ones, like the drama that happened at the county assembly. Today we're here to recap some of the big stories that we covered, and I'm joined here by writers at Mtaa Wangu. Next to me I have Joseph Openda, I have Purity Kinuthia, and Brett Sanya. My name is Riz Mureithi. I'm the editor Mtaa Wangu. So we're going to start off with one of our biggest stories, which was the death of Aileen. And Brett Sanya is the one who covered that story. So Brett is going to take us through the death, how we got to find out about it, and also some of the grim details that the postmortem revealed. Sanya?
The death of Aileen happened over a weekend in sometime between May and June. And the death was actually very sad. According to the autopsy rather, she was thrown out of the vehicle and she suffered head injuries, and she also had severe injuries on her body. The sad thing about this case is the culprit, who is suspected to have committed this murder, is yet to be arrested.
Another heartbreaking story for us was also the rampant deaths that were reported in Rongai sub-county. Again, Sanya was our team lead.
So on that, actually, we never really knew of the 4 deaths at once. What actually happened was, it was on a Friday, and we got a call that there's a body that has been found in Baraka Estate. So upon arrival, we found Vera Mugambi, who had been killed. And then on Saturday is when we came into work, and then we got to realize that the day before, another woman, Mweni Mwalimu, had also been killed in Old Rongai. We got in touch with some of our sources also in Rongai, and then they told us in July, the previous month, another 4-year-old had been killed. So at this point, we had 3 dead bodies, and so we decided to just do an analysis of the 4 of the murders. And then it was when we were doing an analysis when we got to realize the method in which these women were killed was more or less similar, because they had all been raped. The 4-year-old had been defiled, and then they all had head injuries, blunt force trauma. And then it was after that is when we deduced that there must have been someone who was doing this, because all these murders were happening in the same sub-county, Rongai. And after 2 or 3 weeks is when the main suspect was arrested, Ezekiel Mwangi, and the case is currently ongoing in court.
We now move to the county assembly, where we have witnessed drama in the last 4 to 5 months. And our point person on this story was Joseph Openda. So he's going to tell us what caused this drama and what is the current situation at the assembly.
Well, thank you, Riz. Indeed, there was a lot of drama at the Nakuru County Assembly. First, it began early in the year, where we saw Menengai East MP tabling a motion on the impeachment of the CS, Dr. Samuel Mohora. But the motion was disqualified for lack of a standing order, and this is what prompted other members of County Assembly to begin the process of removing the then majority leader, Mr. Alex Lagat. And then we saw there was a lot of controversy in the removal, where we had the majority of UDA MCAs voted for the impeachment, but we had a group that were against his removal. So the case proceeded to the tribunal, and at some point, Mr. Lagat got stay orders before the orders were vacated some 2 weeks later. So the controversy attracted or caught the attention of the UDA leadership, and it had to intervene. And after the court pronounced or vacated the orders, the UDA party summoned the MCAs to the headquarters, where they agreed to vote in, and they voted Mr. Wilson Mutai as the majority leader.
This was also the year that Nakuru held the World Rally Championship, and Purity was there. So she's going to tell us how fun that must have been.
Thank you so much. I think WRC for Nakuru has always had a bit of pomp, and people coming up, traveling far from the country. Our neighboring countries like Uganda, Tanzania heavily represent themselves. But then the good thing with this year, we didn't have traffic. Last year people were stuck on the road and they never got to the scene. That was Kedong, Suisambu, Sleeping Warrior. So this year we had Health Gate. So it was colorful. It was a colorful event where I think Kenyans also got to interact with the drivers. As you come to Naivasha, people had autograph signed, and I think that was an exciting moment for most Kenyans and young children.
We remain in Naivasha and we want to talk about the lake. This was also the year that we witnessed significant rise of Lake Naivasha, and it affected the businesses, especially some of the hotels that are on the shores. Joseph Openda will give us more details.
Well, it was around May where we had an increased amount of rainfall. The increase in the levels of water submerged some facilities, including hotels in Naivasha. We also had estates being submerged, and families were forced to vacate. Some roads leading to various estates, including Kihoto Estate, were also submerged by water, so making movement inaccessible. And also we saw some hotels closing down because there were no access roads to those facilities. But after some time, the water subsided, though the hotels are yet to be reopened. That the water started rising some 2 months ago, and since then they've continued to rise, and it's not yet clear whether it will stop based on what has been going on.
We move on to one of the most anticipated projects here in Nakuru, the historic Afraha Stadium, which a lot of residents were really looking forward to its completion, but still, December 2024, incomplete. Joseph Openda went there and looked at what is happening. Why is this completion taking too long? And maybe Openda, you can tell us, what did you find?
Well, we covered the Afraha Stadium sometimes in October. This was in our second episode of the podium. And the reason we decided to cover this is because there were a lot of complaints regarding the delayed completion of the project. Remember, this project was supposed to take only 1 year, but now we were at the 4th year, yet there were no signs of the project being completed or the facility being reopened. So when we went there, we were able to gain access into the stadium, and we realized that the project had really been done. A number of things had already been completed, but what we were informed is that the county was waiting to install the seats at the pavilions, something that was delayed by the budget. But we had been promised that in a month's time, the county would be able to reopen. But up to this point, we've not been able to see the facility being reopened.
This stadium, it was being done in phases. So if this is phase 1, it has taken 4 years. The other phases will take how long? So are we going to build one stadium in 20 years' time?
All right, thank you, Openda. If you are a resident of Nakuru, then you must have interacted with baboons at the Lake Nakuru National Park. While for a lot of us, they're just fun animals to look at and give bananas to, there are some residents who have very sad stories to tell. And this is what we found when we did a special report dubbed Visirani Vyanyani. Purity, you can give us a bit more details on this?
The story Visirani Vyanyani was covered by Brett, myself, and Openda. We went to Free Area, we went to Lakeview, and it was a disheartening state where we found residents whose roofs had been, I would say, poked holes by the baboons, and they have nothing to do about it. Year in, year out, the baboons live with them, and they've been forced to learn how to live with the baboons. Yet they've been airing complaints with the Kenya Wildlife Service, and nothing has been done. The painful part was when we saw a woman who had her hand paralyzed after she was beat twice by a baboon. And I think at first we couldn't see how a baboon could make you get paralyzed. You are born healthy, but then at the age of 40, 44 there, she's not paralyzed, can't work, can't do anything for herself. So that's why we did the Visirani Vyanyani, just to show the pain, the anger that residents have, whereas no one is listening to them.
Another special report that we did was one that we dubbed Janga Langata. Sanya, please tell us what informed us to explore this.
Okay, thank you. So along the Ngata stretch, we've witnessed so many accidents in the past year. The Mtaa Wangu team, being all of us who are here, we decided to go and find out why there are so many accidents along that stretch. And when we got there, we got to speak to some of the residents who shed light on the matter. They first of all told us about how cars overlap, how there are no bus terminals along the road, and how the roads are not clearly marked. So also apart from that, we also talked to Kenha, who on their end said that the dual carriage is already done, so just a few touches here and there. Then we hope the accidents will reduce.
Moving on to the health sector of Nakuru. This year we witnessed the closure of one of the most popular hospitals called Medihill. It was also the year that we had significant drama on War Memorial, more like a continuation of the drama that started last year. Openda, what was happening on that front?
So thank you. We were actually surprised when we heard or learned that the Medihill Hospital, which is one of the key hospitals or health facilities in Nakuru, was being auctioned. We realized later that the hospital had been undergoing some financial constraints, to a point that they could not even pay for their doctors. So the doctors are the ones who went to the court to have the hospital compelled to pay for their dues. But when the hospital did not respond, they applied for an auction, and that's when they sought the services of Tango auctioneers, who went there and auctioned some of the properties belonging to the hospital. Regarding War Memorial Hospital, its problems began last year. The county government tried to take over the hospital for the second time in February, and this saw the patients being transferred to other facilities, and finally the hospital was closed. So since then, the hospital has remained shut up to this point. The private management went to court and tried to have the county reopen the hospital. In that process, we saw some officials, including the county secretary, Dr. Samuel Mwaura, the county police commander during that period, Mr. Samuel Ndanyi, being summoned to court. And they did appear, but surprisingly, the order to reopen was never complied with. That is the reason up to now the hospital has remained shut. The case went up to the Court of Appeal, and we saw the court in a move to try and resolve the issue, formed an interim management committee comprising of 5 members, with 2 representatives from the county government, 2 representatives from the hospital, and 1 representative from the national government. At around October, end of October, the team was complete, and the court was, or it was confirmed before court that the team was ready to begin or to reopen the hospital. But recently we had a report that was coming to court that the hospital still has a very huge bill, electricity and water bill, that was preventing or that was making the reopening a problem. So the hospital need to first clear the bill before they can reopen the hospital. But up to now, we still hope to see when the facility will be reopened.
We dived right into the party scene of Nakuru, and this was a sad year for party lovers because Groundless Club was shut down. Now, this was not a normal club because it used to host a strip show every Thursday, which is very new to Nakuru and also the only one. So you can imagine how popular that was. You would think Nakuru people are conservative, but that place would fill up every Thursday. So the closing down of that club did have a significant impact on the entertainment space here in Nakuru. On the flip side, on the religion front, we saw the introduction of street worship, another first for Nakuru. This was being spearheaded by Faith Ndohio, who is a known gospel artist based here in Nakuru. They held a few sessions, I think 4 or 5, but at the moment they have taken a pause for the Christmas break. So should you be someone who wants to be part of that, look out for that street worship next year. We move on to maandamano, which was witnessed across the country. But what was unique for Nakuru is that for the first time in a very long time, Nakuru joined in the protests. Usually we're very shy and we stay away from all the tear gas. Sanya, how bad was it?
At first, it wasn't really that bad. It was actually quite peaceful, and most of the Gen Zs who came out for the protests would actually just march through Kenyatta Avenue or through town, and by 4-5 the protests were done. People were going home. But when it really got bad for Nakuru was on June 25th. We know in Nairobi, Parliament was invaded, and in Nakuru, I remember it was at around 3:30. We were in the office and we thought the protests are done as always. By 3:30 people start dispersing, going home. But then we receive a call and we were told there are a group of people who were trying to breach State House. So together with the NTV and Daily Nation team, we went there, and that scene, I can say I've never seen anything like that before. Could see people running, and then the police actually firing at the protesters directly. And after a while, they were dispersed, but the amount of damage that was done, I remember we saw pools of blood, and then bullets all around, and then from afar you could hear the protesters saying, "Wameua, wameua, wameua," and it was at that time when I think we also realized things were bad.
Well, our hearts go out to the families of everyone who lost a loved one during the protests. We pray for peace, and we pray that you are going to be okay. We change gears into the business front. This was the year that we saw the launch of the Jumbo Auto Auction Yard in Maimahio at the Special Economic Zone. It was actually opened by President William Ruto, a big deal for people who are in the car business. And what we'll be looking out for as Mtaa Wangu next year is which other businesses are going to come into the special economic zone, and how is that going to change the economic health of Nakuru County. Still in business, this was the year that we saw the closure of Munchies, which was a food delivery app. Purity, how did that happen?
So I think big time people have relied on international delivery apps to get stuff to their doorsteps, but then we had one developed in Nakuru, And I think the founders developed it based on the need of getting Nyamachowa, a story covered by Wanjiku Muthoni. And she's like, yeah. So, but then the sad part is seeing it die when it started very young and people are very hopeful about it. But then speaking to the founders, COVID really affected them, where there's no more, people are not ordering as much and the spending culture was a bit low and the cost of fuel was getting up. So just even maintaining the whole thing and running it with no orders, with fuel prices quite high, they needed to do something. So they did it at a slowdown. They didn't close at once. At one point, there was a technical issue where they're trying to work on it, but eventually, when they saw it was not bringing forth, they announced to the Nakuru fans, or I would say Nakuru people who use the app, that the app is going to be closing. But then let's hope in the future that they get to work on what was happening, because then they said it's not an end for them. So maybe you might see them come back again and serve the Nakuru market and a wider market, because they had also tapped into other markets outside Nakuru.
We're going to move into the environment space, and this was the year that we witnessed a clash between the county government and environmental activists because of Lions Garden. Sanya, what was happening?
Okay, so Lions Garden has been under reconstruction for the last 1 year now. And of course, when it started, people were very happy that the garden was getting a facelift. But as time went by, people started realizing that they're putting up stalls in the garden. And this actually angered some of the residents, especially the environmentalists, who argued that that space is purely a recreational space. And this went on for a while, and it actually landed in court, and where the county government was actually had been taken to court, and they were supposed to stop the construction of the stalls. In December this year, a ruling was made, and the court decided to put conservatory orders, meaning that the construction of those stalls was actually supposed to be stopped. And so that's where we are at the moment.
On a sad note, 2024 was the year that we witnessed the Mai Mahiu tragedy, where people lost their lives due to floods that rocked the area. Openda, how bad was the situation?
The flooding at Mai Mahiu was a really bad situation because we saw water that had collected in a gorge over time burst and flowed downstream, swept an entire village in Mai Mahiu, and with it swept people's village and homes. At least 50 people lost their lives, and we also had around 110 people displaced from their homes. The government came in to try and rescue the community. There was also support or a combined effort from the national government and the county. There were promises of the families being compensated, but up to now, recently when we visited, we had families which claim not to have been compensated until this point. They are still waiting to see whether the government will come in and honor their promise of at least rebuilding their homes. Thank you.
Ilitokea tu kusikia tu nini mamaye, mgulumo wa mamaye yenyewe ilikuwa inateremka. Saa tuko tunajua kinini inaendelea. Kutoka sasa mtu akitoka nyumbani ndio unapata, unaona ndio kuna mto yenyewe ni mingi imebeba hadi na miti.
Still on the devastating impact of the rains, in 2024 we witnessed several fissures that occurred in different parts of Nakuru County, which informed our decision to do a special report that we called Rift in the City. Purity, what did we highlight in this series?
I must say that Rift in the City was collaboration between all of us here. And the previous year, remember Kiamunyi had also developed a sign of a fissure which collapsed, and the government filled it back and it collapsed again. So we are like, what's happening? And we decided to do a tour around Nakuru just to see areas that residents were like, this is not really normal. We toured the whole place. We went to London. There was a fissure in Mai Mahiu, but then we did get to visit it, but then a story had been done about it. So over time, we noticed that the rainy season really brought out the weak areas of Nakuru, and clearly Everready was one of the areas where a fissure developed, also where one fissure developed and the government also filled it back. So to understand this quite well, we spoke to a geologist, Professor Oboere from Egerton University, and he explained that Nakuru is quite an area which has volcanic ash, and when we have a situation where we have a flash flood running through the ground, and it gets to wash away the soil which is not well consolidated or well compacted. So over time, during the rainy season, we are prone to seeing fissures collapsing, but then this doesn't mean that hazikuwa hapo. Maybe the area of weakness is just identified when triggered, and the trigger most of the time ni maji. Yeah, the other thing was the trucks that run through Nakuru or like use the Nakuru route, they quite shake the ground a lot, and people are not quite sure, but then they suspect that we might be having hollow grounds in Nakuru. So more is yet to be done by investigators who came from the national government and the county government. Let's wait for the report and see what comes out of it.
In 2024, we also got wind of a number of defilement cases that were reported, but one particular one had a happy ending because the suspects were found guilty. Sanya, what were the details of this case?
So in this case, there were 3 suspects who were actually found guilty. So with regards to this, they actually invited a girl over to their home, and then they defiled her overnight, and in the morning, while trying to do away with the evidence, rather they threw the condoms in some very not so dignified places, and this actually led them to actually being caught, and they were arraigned in court, and they were given 3 years probation. And apart from that, last month we also had another individual who was brought to court on 37 counts of defilement, and the case is still ongoing. This year we have had so many femicide and defilement cases, and most of the CSOs, the government, and also end femicide champions have come out to blame the courts for being the weakest link with regards to matters defilement, saying that they do not expedite the cases and they want them to take more action with regards to matters defilement. Thank you.
Now, we would not be doing this review justice if we do not talk about rugby. And we claim Nakuru to be the home of rugby in this country. We had quite a number of tournaments that were held here. Purity, how did that go down?
I see you smiling. I think you're more a rugby fan than I am. But anyway, the two are football fans. So in Nakuru, we had like major tournaments coming here. We had 10-a-side, we had the 15s running, and we had 7-a-side, which is I think the most popular that we had this year. Happy to see that huge crowds came out, and the best thing of rugby is the after party and the game during the day, which is very active, and in the evening people proceed and have sherehe. But then this year there was a bit of a change. We had the Nakuru Derby where Menengai Oilers won, and that was a game for home fans just to see who is the strongest, but then not to judge any, but then to embrace all but celebrate the winner. And eventually also, this is where the end of the 7th circuit season happened, and the Kenya Harlequins won it. But then the Prince Lou Sevens was won by Strathmore Leos. So there was a very huge change from the norm that you've been seeing in the rugby culture, especially with Prince Lou. We had some people who were dominant with Prince Lou, but this year everything changed. From the person that you expected to win was the one who was out even before the semis. So I just want to see how next year will be. And 15th is on, the season is on, and Menengai has had an unbeaten season. Nakuru is coming through quite well, so let's see how the rugby space come 2025 would be.
I'm just here for the fun, the sun, and to see people.
Whichever team wins, that's okay. Because for me, I'm here for Dark Child at 7D today and after party.
Well, that marks the end of our yearly review. Listen, this was just the tip of the iceberg. There are so many other stories that we covered this year that you can find on our website, nakuru.mtaawangu.co.ke. You can also check us out on all social media platforms at Mtaa Wangu. We had an amazing year engaging with you, our audience, especially in the comment sections on Facebook. Thank you so much to each one of you who engaged with our content.
Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. See you in 2025.